Daipa, you can tell me when to start, huh? I'll wait.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Is it raining in Silchar?
So let us wait 5 minutes more, then we shall start.
Yeah, I'm just out of the way. Is it raining in Silchar?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's showing some clouds here in my PPT.
It is not raining actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Chakraborty, just wait for a while.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, let some more people join, then we shall start.
Fine. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Is the cursor visible?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Oh.
তুমি ইউটিউবটা স্ট্রিমিংটা অন ঠিক আছে দেখো দেখি আমার কই মেস ডাটাই
I think we can start.
Okay.
So good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Dipanda, and our today's speaker is Professor Pavan Chakraborty, who is the head of the department in the Department of Information Technology of Indian Institute of Information Technology, Allahabad. He will be speaking on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the title of the talk is From Signal to Data to Information to Knowledge. So let us welcome the speaker. A short bio of him is I am now going to tell you. He acquired MSc in physics from IIT Kanpur in 1992. He obtained his PhD from Indian Institute of Astrophysics in 2002. After that, he was a postdoctoral fellow in IUCAA during 2002 to 4. And after that, he joined teaching in physics as a teacher in physics in the Department of Physics of Assam University. And he worked there between 2004 and 7. And after that, he joined IIT Allahabad, where he is still working. So, sir, please come in and you may please start.
Thank you very much, Daipan. It was a pleasure when Dr. Daipan called me for this talk. Daipan has been my MSc student at Assam University, and it was pleasure, sort of a homecoming, to come back and enjoy a meeting with Daipan. Well, I joined as a physicist at IIITA, but since the main thrust area of IIITA being in IT, I slowly moved into information technology. And after joining IIITA, I've worked in an area where you have astrophysics and machine learning as well as robotics into it, wherever there is some instrumentation and other things which is there related to information technology. I've been working in these domains. So what I will do is that I will try to give you a different perspective. I am more of a data analyst, being of an astrophysics background with an observational background. My thesis was in astrophysics. My thesis was in cometary dust. So I know well how to analyze data and how to see data in a different perspective. In fact, I will try to take you in this journey of AI and machine learning through the windows of a physicist or a person that we do physics. In fact, when we do in school, we learn some theorems or some things. We do physics, and later on we'll become computer scientists and other things. So let me take a simple example. What I'm going to do is that first let me visualize. Here I have a graph where I would like to plot size versus mass of different objects which comes to my mind. Say, for instance, I take some breakfast cereals. It would have some size of this kind. It would be a size less than a meter, of course, and it would be of something like this, and it will have a mass of some amount like this in grams. And if I take the weight of the people, you can have tall people and fat people and also short people. So basically, people would occupy this portion of the graph. Similarly, if I take cars are a little bigger than people. They would be more on the right-hand side, and they're heavier, so they would be also above in this queue. Now further, if I keep adding objects to this thing, so like the whale, the squilla, and if I take a mountain which is visible from Silchar or somewhere else, it would come somewhere here out of the graph. And then if I take a horizon, it would be something like 100 kilometers. And anything within the horizon will have so much of mass. So if I take other objects, like I take a grain of sand, insect, a speck of dust. Now what I see here is that I see something that all these objects seem to be aligned in a straight line. In fact, I can draw a line, a fitting line, a least square fit line. And when we plot this least square fit line, we see that this line is equivalent to the density of water. Basically, the slope of any line in this sort of a graph would give you the density, because this is size versus this thing. So you have got a water density which comes in here. So this is very interesting. Anything which is living or which is surrounding us are generally pertaining to density is very close to that of water. So this is a thing. By just visualizing the data, I try to get an information. Yes, life and other objects which is there are very close to the density of water. So now I put different things, like a room filled with water will always be on the line. Then a room filled with rock and a room filled with air is lighter. So you have these three dots here. I put some astrophysical quantities like a white dwarf material. Of course, it is very dense. So it would come here. I'll have a neutron star, which will come pretty here. The mass is very high, while the size is very small. And on the other hand, if I take the interstellar medium, where it is practically the vacuum, where it has about 5 hydrogen atoms per meter square, I'll have a density which is coming here. So this space that we know of, the vacuum or the space that we know of, will be somewhere here in the graph, and you have one of the heaviest material, the neutron star, which would be out here. So, but let me expand this graph a little more. And so this is now the whole human world is compressed in this region. The atoms, the human worlds are compressed in this region. And what you see here, the atoms and the nuclei, they have different densities. The nuclei are smaller in size, but having similar density, because assuming the electrons not having the practically zero mass or very negligible mass compared to the nucleus. So you have the nuclei which is here. So then I can put stars and planets would come somewhere here. The galaxy would come somewhere here. And if I keep adding to this world, now I've made it a little smaller. And you see here I put one of the heavy atoms, that is uranium atom, and then the hydrogen atom being the lightest atom. Similarly, the nucleus is here. So if I see here, the atoms, the cell, the human being, the mountain, earth, Jupiter, sun, they all fall practically aligned in this graph. And this alignment is nothing else but the atomic density. Plain and simple, okay, this is known knowledge. It is all falling into the atomic density. Fine. So then let me put in some more material. I've seen white dwarf. Of course, it is not normal matter, or neutron stars, which are moving towards what I see is nuclear densities, that is uranium nucleus or hydrogen nucleus. And if I plot this other density, this is called the nuclear density. Obviously, what we see is that these are compressed materials where you have got all the fermions can be as closely compact to each other. So neutron stars and white dwarfs is where the Pauli's exclusion principle actually creates the pressure, keeping these mass or against the gravitational collapse of the mass. So you have this as the thing. So they are very close to the nuclear density. Now you see here the galaxy, of course, does not fall in either the atomic density nor does it fall into the nuclear density. Of course, the galaxy has a lot of space in between, and certainly it will, in our solar system, for instance, it is less massive than, or the size is larger than its mass, and therefore it doesn't fall into this atomic category. Interstellar medium, clusters and void, that is space, which have placed. Now you see these now come into some separate line, which I call the closure density. Now the closure density is normally taken as 5 hydrogen atom per meter square, and that is what is said to be the normal density of the space around any interstellar medium. So you see that these objects actually fit in very close to the interstellar medium, or basically the 5 hydrogen atoms per meter square. So I have these 3 lines pretty parallel going to each other. Now what I have is, now I put in some amount of physics into the problem. Now physics tells me that I cannot keep compressing material, so I cannot have denser and denser material, because matter is made out of fermions, and because of fermions I cannot place all the fermions in the same energy state, because of which there is a Pauli's exclusion principle, or there is a force that applies. And if I find out what is this density it should have, and if I plot from physics this density, I'll get this mass spacetime effect, which is this line. Okay, and we say that anything that crosses this obviously ceases to be matter. It has become a black hole. So anything which is very small and needs to be of this much of mass to sort of cross this event horizon, or what you say, the black hole mass space-time effect. Now what you see here is that you try to see this line as well as the closure line, which is the density of the universe now, that is the space density. And you see that both these densities intersect at this point. Now, what can you say about it? Of course, this is anything, the matter that moves out into it will become a black hole, or any matter from here will move out, will become a supermassive black hole. But what you see here is the space. This is the space density today, and this is a singularity through which the space has come out. So during Big Bang, I can say that the mass of the Earth, mass of the universe would have been something of this amount. So you see here, I've taken some basic elements. I've not gone into any in-depth physics or gone into a depth cosmology or anything. Just by putting some worldly items into the thing, I have managed to, by visualization, I have sort of got a picture of what should be the mass of the universe, or what should be the size of the universe during the Big Bang, or when the universe came out of the singularity. Okay, so what should have been the mass of the universe? So the mass of the universe can be found out as well as the size of the universe, or which is the size at present, which is there. Okay, so this is some very deep thoughts which are now visible from this graph. So now going back to history, what you have is that we have observed the sky, we have observed things around us, and we have stored them in information in libraries. For instance, I have got Aryabhatta here, a statue from Ayuka, where he had actually written about the positions of stars and Panchangam. Panchangam means taking five elements. What are the 5 elements? Basically Earth, Moon, Sun, Saturn, Jupiter, and the 2 equinoxes, that is the ecliptic cutting the equatorial plane of the Earth. These 2 points are important because that is where you could have eclipses, and these were known as the Rahu Ketu points. These are imaginary points. These are not there, but these 2 points are important in doing calculations as they do precession and other things. So this 5-point calculations is still done by scientists to do relativistic corrections to data and other things which is there. Well, what you have here is the Alexandria Library, which was burned down during Julius Caesar's time. But here is a place where you stored a lot of information or data. So basically, there was every happening was stored and informed or catalogued together. In fact, we started saying that whenever the star Sirius was in the sky, we would know that the Nile would flood. That is just because it's not just because of the star that the Nile would flood. The star kept a timekeeping, because basically there's no astrology to it. There's a star which actually came at a certain time at a certain location, and during that location, or it basically gives you a very accurate timekeeping. And during that time, it was maybe the monsoon season, or during that time, the river would swell and expand. Like we have that in the monsoon period, you have the Barak River flooding different areas of Silchar and that its surrounding areas. So the basically depends. So it was connected with the star because it was there. So there is no astrology to it. It's basically stars are timekeeping. I'm not a propounder of astrology, but stars they move in a clockwork and they're very good timekeepers. Well, now in India, we also produce these Jantar Mantars at Jaipur, Ujjain, New Delhi, Mathura, and Varanasi. So these are some pictures of these Jantar Mantar. These are large instruments which were built to actually measure some astronomical events. So basically with these events, you could again know of the agricultural effects and different time sequences could be measured, and actually timekeeping could be done properly. And of course, later on, it became also part of astrology, which is there, which is basically prediction or extrapolation of the timekeeping. So you try to extrapolate things which is happening in the past to the future. And you, by doing this extrapolation, you feel that you're a soothsayer, or you manage to say the future, but actually your extrapolation may absolutely go wrong, because it need not be a linear function at all. In fact, machine learning is also something like astrology, or it tries to extrapolate things. And by extrapolating, we try to find out. In fact, if we don't have the knowledge of everything, we would certainly like to extrapolate things. So here are the two Jantar Mantar which are in better shapes. That is, one is in Jaipur and the other one is in Delhi. Here I'm saddened to say that I had taken one of the Nobel laureates here, and we had one of my close friends, director of Planetarium Delhi, Ratnashri, had visited us and had explained us about the planetarium, this Jantar Mantar in Delhi. Unfortunately, we lost her yesterday to COVID, and I feel very sorry for her because she has been my just senior, and I really, it's a shock for me in Delhi. Her husband is also an astrophysicist of a kind at Delhi University, Professor Patrick Dasgupta, and Ratnashri has a lot of work in popularizing science in Delhi and its surrounding area. Well, continuing, of course, looking at the universe or trying to understand the real universe was done by Galileo by actually seeing through a telescope and trying to find out that there are other centers around which things move. Well, now I come very quickly because my topic is not astrophysics, it's to talk about data science and AI. So what you have is Tycho Brahe was cataloging the sky very accurately. He had like these Jantar Mantar large instruments, and through which it actually marked the positions of the stars. Unfortunately, he died in a duel, and Kepler kept all his data, and using his data, Kepler tried to find out some relationship. In fact, you would say that this is the first effort in trying to put all the data together and trying to see if I can bring out some sense to it. Like if the planets are moving, why are they moving? What is the shape that I could design so that they follow some very systematic shape? And because you know that the planets on the sky will be spiraling forward and backwards, because that's why the Greeks call it planets, because they keep keep moving. Plane means to move, and from the word plane also came in, which is movement. So this forward and backwards movement, because of the relative motion of the Earth and that of the planet. Whenever the Earth moves faster, the planet looks like moving backwards. Whenever the planet moves faster, the Earth moves. That is what I mean faster or slower. I mean the projected velocity, the projected on the sky plane. Because we know that the planets are moving in a circle. There is a cos theta term which comes. So there is a projected velocity change which certainly comes into the picture. So what Kepler did is that he tried to create a model of this kind, tried to use the different crystallized geometric shapes to explain that if I take these geometric shapes, by knowing the position of one planet, I can actually know the position of other planets by actually putting in some shapes at a particular manner. Of course, there is no truth behind these relations. So happened that he did this. In fact, the better theory about it is that he found out that the planets move in an elliptical orbit, and the total equal area, they sweep equal area with time. So these were conjectures or connecting mathematics with the physical reality or with the data. So basically connecting mathematics to the data, and if you see that something is moving in this ellipse, you say that it is the Earth's planet's movement, so it must be pertaining to Earth. Something moving in the Mars's orbit, of course, it is connected with Mars, or something of that kind. And then you've got other planets like that. Everyone is moving in an ellipse. It was later on when Newton came in, he then tried to find out a relationship which actually connect the movement of the planets to an apple falling from the tree. So this is where physics came in at a later period. Earlier it was just what we call it a machine learning or an intuitive mathematics or a visualization of the data saying that the planets move in an elliptical path. So what you see is that trying to put sense or a theory that this is unified to a normal apple falling on the Earth, as well as a satellite moving around the Earth, or the Earth moving around the sun, or the moon moving around the Earth. So this is where you have. Now, when you don't have a theory, then of course you can go and do conjectures. Now here I'll just show you a figure, just to give you some example again from astrophysics, is that I've plotted the density of the planets with respect to the distance from the sun. So what you see is that, okay, the Mercury is heaviest, Venus is a little less massive than the Earth. Then you have the Earth, you have got Mars, as the asteroid Jupiter. And here what you see is that these large planets have more gaseous planets. Of course, the densities are smaller, they're bigger in size, they are swirling at a higher speed, so the centrifugal force is larger. Saturn being the lowest density, you see that Saturn's density is much less than that of water. Then you've got Uranium, Neptune, and of course Pluto is ice, it's not a planet anymore. But you see that Pluto is somewhere here, which is there. But something which keeps striking us is that if I plot the moon's density, it falls somewhere out here. So what you see here is that why should moon be here? If moon is with the Earth, it should have a density close to that of the Earth. So these leaves questions, or these are known as outliers. And whenever you have an outlier, you try to find out that that's where your science lies. In fact, there is a work that myself and Dapayan did, is that we actually tried to find out outliers in spectral classification, and we saw that the outliers were actually wrongly classified. And there was a paper that we had published together. It was a wonderful paper, a wonderful work by Dapayan, and a good computational work that we had done an error calculation and said that how much the error should be, and if there is something more than this, certainly it is an outlier, and therefore it is wrongly classified. So here, of course, the moon is not wrongly classified. It goes into the history of the formation of the moon. So it basically tells us that the moon formed at a later period than the Earth. It actually picked up some chunk from the surface of the Earth, which was less dense, while the core Earth had already coagulated, and the core was having heavier material, while the surface had lighter material. So since the moon was made out of the surface material of the Earth, it was lighter in density. Well, so this was about the moon and the outliers. Now I come to signals. See, anything that we do measure depends on the signal. It depends on either the light coming to us or the heat wave coming to us. So we measure it through some device. So what do we have as a device? We have, say in this case, a light falling on an RLD produces some electricity or some voltage. This voltage is a transducer. It changes into a digital number by an analog to digital converter. So what you do is that at that time, what you're doing is that you're sampling the data, right? Now, by sampling the data, you may actually do can I add artifacts to my signal? It is possible, because this is one of the greatest mistakes that people in machine learning do, is that they take some data, some time sequence data, and then they do a Fourier transform of it. And after doing a Fourier transform of it, they take very high frequency features, power spectral features, and say that these are my features which explains my object. And using this, they try to define it. While the signal has been just 50 signals per second, so which will certainly not have such high frequency. So it will have maximum 50 hertz frequency in the data, and all the signal that you're seeing at megahertz range, which is basically pure noise. So basically you will be modeling noise and not the data. So this is very much important, is that when we get a signal, we should know what we get. Just to illustrate this better, let me give you or show you this example of this helicopter. I don't see why this is not playing. Let me just see if I can make this play. Let me see. Where is it gone? Where is it? Yeah. Okay. So here you see the helicopter. The interesting part of this is an Apache helicopter, and in this Apache helicopter, what you see is that the helicopter's propeller, the main propeller, is not rotating, and if it is not rotating, the helicopter cannot fly. So it is contradicting the helicopter's request. So basically what is happening here is that you have, wait a minute, you have here the camera rate, or the camera which is actually taking pictures. Movie is nothing else but a still pictures, series of still pictures, and has gone into sync with the blade rotating, and therefore the blade looks static. Of course, in reality, it is not static, so it gives us a wrong image of the physical reality. So one has to be very careful with the data when you handle the data, when you change the data from a signal to a data, you should be very careful. This is to give you another example. Supposing I'm sampling a signal at this rate, and I have a sine wave, a pretty high frequency signal, which is coming here. And if I sample it, this is where I would sample this data. And you will see that when I sample this data like this, and from the sample data, if I draw conclusions, I see that I certainly do not get the period of oscillation of my signal. The period is entirely different. You see here, I get a lower frequency rather than the high frequency which is there. Now, if my sampling rate equals the actual frequency of the signal, if it so happens, that is, sampling rate is equal to the period of oscillation of the signal, you will see that I will notice the signal at exactly the same location, and when it comes, and when I plot, I will get a straight line. I'll say that the signal is a static signal. It is not varying in time. It is a stationary signal. So what you see is that one has to have sufficient amount of data to tell us something about the variation of the object. If the variation speed or oscillations is larger, you need from the Nackwitz theorem, it tells us that we need to have at least minimum 2 points per wavelength. So if you have got less than 2 points, you will come across these errors which come. In fact, you will see sometimes this digitization of the pictures, you see that images become a little boxy. These are also effects of this sampling which is there. Okay, so now here a next stage is my data, which is the symbols. And of course, now you have got the big elephant sitting on the data, that is the big data which sits. And of course, there is an overwhelming data which needs to be analyzed, and you don't have sufficient number of people with visualization to do it. So now you need the machines to do these analysis. In fact, in astrophysics, that's where machine learning comes in, is that we need machines to analyze our data, because there's petabytes and terabytes of data which have gathered around. Of course, there is a lot of data on the financial markets and other domains that we will see. So this is big data. So big data is not magic. It does not matter how much data you have if you can't make sense of it. So this is important. You may have a lot of data, but you may have to make sense of it. Say, for instance, we could not make sense, and we were very happy that the coronavirus is gone, but suddenly there was this double mutant which came up and which had a larger transmission, and it affected the lower age group people, and suddenly with a bang we are all infested by the coronavirus again. In fact, we did not analyze or understand the data very well. Well, the more data is generated, like we have banking, telecom, other business transactions, scientific data like astronomy, biology, web-based text, e-commerce, Facebook, WhatsApp, they all give a lot of data which is there. So there is a trend leading to a data flood which is there, which is happening. And we are not practically ready here. As you see here, this cartoon that Noah has made the small boat, assuming that this would carry all his passengers during the data flood. And that's your R for big data flood, Noah. You will need a lot more storage space. In fact, when I started computer science, the IBM head said that 64K would be the maximum data usage in a computer. Now you don't have computers with 64K, right? I used big spools of data during astronomy, and it was just 64 megabytes. Now you don't talk about you talk about in terabytes. You never talk about gigabytes also. So now you see interestingly that there are different things here. You see there is Ant, Hadoop, Python, Mahout, PIG, CAS, Orange, Perl. Now what you see here, these are actually softwares or R, for instance. These are diagnostic tools which go with machine learning or go with data science, and they are the animals which are part of the Noah's boat to analyze the big data search. Okay, so now this was about data, and of course from data what we need to do is that we need to convert the data into information. That is when from the data we need to extract or try to answer questions like who, what, where, when. Okay, so can we extract this information from the data? These simple questions, who, what, where, and then. So knowledge management, and of course when we come to the knowledge management, the turning data into knowledge. So you have got signal, data, information, and knowledge. This was what was there. So what we have here, data moving into information and information moving into knowledge. So knowledge discovery is the central theme of science. Basically from observation, you try to find out the knowledge or find out science from it. Knowledge discovery in database, that is KDD, is the killer app or large scientific database. Therefore, KDD data mining is an essential tool since big data science is here to stay at petabytes and beyond. So basically, when the data becomes big, it goes into KDD, that is data mining in data. So here again, we come to knowledge, and from knowledge, what do we have next? Next, of course, is the understanding. After you manage to answer these questions of how in knowledge, that is answer how things are happening, you appreciate why things are happening. This is understanding. So there's an appreciation which comes in the thing, and in the top layer of the pyramid is finally the wisdom, that is evaluation of understanding, evoluted understanding, that is to understand or having a deeper knowledge of the total thing in totality. So it is more important that we move. In fact, I may sound philosophical. These are also questions which are dealt in philosophy, spirituality, and other things. But science is also one of the domains which is very philosophical and of course goes towards wisdom. So related fields, what you have is databases. We have got large database. Next is statistics. When you have large data, you need to find out how the data behaves in an ensemble. And this brings in statistics. Of course, you need to visualize the data. I need to plot the data. Like I showed that I visualized the data of different objects in the universe and try to find out this mass of the universe and the size of the universe from it. Similarly, I have got machine learning, and all these together forms the data mining and knowledge discovery. So basically, I need a knowledge of all these four topics to actually get this thing. So me as an astrophysicist, I had good knowledge of database. Basically, I collected a lot of data, and then you plot a lot of graphs and other things, and you try to extract information. You know about visualization, and when you handle large data, of course, and when you do error theory and other things, you a physicist learns a lot of statistics. Only thing that remains is machine learning, or trying to get into machine learning. Now, machine learning has become much simpler, basically, by usage of Python, which is basically, if you have a logical mind, it is very easy to program in Python, and there are online tutorials which are available to teach you Python and the basics of machine learning. But I'm trying to go into the depth behind the machine learning aspects. So let me see the different aspects of statistics, machine learning, and data mining. So statistics is more theory-based, more focused on teaching hypothesis, while machine learning is more heuristic, focused on improving performance of a learning agent. So here this is important, improving the performance of a learning agent. Also looks at real-time learning and robotics area, not part of data mining. And the third is data mining and knowledge discovery, integrates theory and heuristics, focuses on the entire process of knowledge discovery, including data cleaning, learning and integration and visualization of results. Now, the distinction between these different domains, of course, I have not put visualization here. Visualization is how to visualize or how to see the data in totality. So distinction is again are fuzzy in this case. So knowledge discovery in data is non-trivial, a process of identifying valid, novel, and potentially useful, and ultimately understandable patterns in the data. This is from a book which is there by the MIT Press. Now coming to the basic history of artificial intelligence, there is the electronic brain, which was basically by W. Pitts and Mac Kuloch had sort of thought of some basic binary logic to describe an electronic brain. Of course, later on you had the perceptron idea, which was brought in the 1950s by Rosette Ballant, B. Windows and Hoff, which you have, and later on Minsky and Perpert brought in XOR problems, or problems in trying to separate out different aspects. This with 1960 started the golden era of machine learning and AI. It started with AI and then later took the image on the name of machine learning. So here you have got Minsky and Pratt, and of course later on you have this multi-layered perceptron backpropagation was described. Basically you had the neural network where you could connect things and you could explain nonlinear problems using a very specifically multiple linear transactions, and you have input layer, an output layer, and a hidden layer, and then you do it. And of course, later on, then you have the SVM, where you sort of clustering and you try to find out the boundary which could separate out different clusters, physically take it into some hyperspace or a different space where you could separate out the results from the known data, and using this known data separation, you try to find out from the unknown data, does it lie with class A or class B in the process. So from there up to 2010 and now what we have is the deep neural network which has dominated, where you really don't need to think. Basically it is confusing, is that you give the data, you give the training set, it finds the total number of internal layers and tries to fix the data into the training set. But the problem with such cases is that you may overtrain the object, or you may get overfitting in the result. The overfitting in the result comes when you have a limited training set. The idea is that this deep neural network, we can only work when I have large amount of data, when I have large amount of known result of the data. Using the known result of the data, I could then locate the result of the unknown data. But this is important, is that when I have the machine itself chooses the number of layers, it can actually fit anything to anything. So one has to be very careful is that if you have sufficiently large data, which is tuned data or trained data, that is when this machine gets better trained. This is important that you need large data to do deep neural network. Please don't take just 5 sets of data and say that I'm taking deep neural network. Everything will get fitted. So, well, here is the full pictures from 1940 to 2010. I'm now finished 45 minutes. Please give me 15 more minutes or I'll just try to cover up. So basically, a human playing chess against the computer, although a human playing the human is losing, he still feels he is intelligent, whereas he considers the computer to be stupid. Even after the historic victory of IBM's Deep Blue over the world champion Garry Kasparov in 1997, the reaction of the human is still justified. Deep Blue's success is due to largely the processing speed. It could process a lot of data before, a lot of games before or what in the speed in which Garry Kasparov could do. So basically what you have is large crunching of data in short amount of time. So what is intelligence is, now I'll pose a set of questions. Is a housefly intelligent? So a housefly is much simpler than most of our attempts to artificial intelligence. For example, it is unlikely that a housefly forms a 3D surface description of objects, reasons about the threat of human with a fly swatter, in particular about the human's belief, goal, or plan, makes analogy concerning the suitability for egg laying between dead pigs, constructs a naive physics theory and how it lands on the ceiling. So what you have is a small housefly which can do a lot of thinking. Does it have intelligence? Does it think so intelligently like a human being? What it has is that it has a closed connected sensor to actuators. Basically, what you have is a reactive model, which in robotics, or it is said, it's a reactive model. Like when we touch something hot, our hand reacts. We don't think about it. So it has a reactive model and has a pre-wired patterns of behavior and has simple navigational techniques, functions almost as a deterministic machine. And yet a housefly is much more successful in real world than our attempt in AI. So in fact, this proves, in fact, you try to catch a housefly, you'll see that it is so difficult to catch a housefly with the amount of intelligence that you have. It is very difficult to capture a housefly. So coming to the machine learning, what we have here is creating a program that can automatically learn rules from the data. So what you have, a traditional algorithm versus machine learning. The traditional algorithm is that I have a cat, a picture of a cat and a tiger, and I hard code the rules. I say that this is the color of the tiger. Tiger will have always black stripes, yellow cover, and other things. If of course there is a albino tiger, then it becomes difficult, and you can distinguish between a cat and a tiger. But a machine learning it will try to learn rules. You will give him about 100 pictures of tigers and 100 pictures of cat, and it tries to find out the difference between cat pictures and tiger pictures. And by doing so, it creates a rule by itself, and then it sort of classifies any other new picture that comes in of a tiger or a cat, and classifies it in one of the domains and tells if it has learned it, if it is a tiger or a cat. The learned rules must be general, do well on future tests of data. Idea of generalization is more data. So machine learning in real world, broadly, we use machine learning in internet, robotics, healthcare, biology, computer vision, and natural language processing. That is the language that we speak, English, French, Bengali, or Sileti, or any other language that we speak. These are natural language, database, computer system, and finance sectors, astrophysics, and wherever there's large amount of data, that is where you have got some applications. So information retrieval, that is text and visual and multimedia searches, like search engines are trying to find out something with from the text. If the text has been has something said, something good or bad, or can I create a summary of the whole news article, because I don't have time to read the whole news article, which Google does. Machine translation, can I translate from one language to another language? Question answering, can I answer question knowing multiple answers to similar questions? Can I answer the questions by itself? Can the machine answer the question? Social networking, trying to see from the social network whose friend, who is fallen in love with whom, and who is with who else, and basically you can try to find out the mannerisms of everybody, in fact, from that. Recommendation system, Amazon, Netflix uses it, seeing your behavior in shopping or seeing a different article, or it reads your sort of scratch area or your history, and from there it tries to find out what sort of a person you are, and then it sort of recommends you some sort of movies in this reaction. So speech, handwriting, object recognition, obviously we have this handwriting recognition, signature recognition, ad placement in the website. When you're looking at a website, which ad should the website see? See, if you have done some Amazon search, you will see that those search items do come as advertisements on the website. This is because they know that you're interested in it, and it sort of advertises in it. Credit card fraud detections also can be done. Weather predictions, autonomous vehicles like driving, we have worked on this, healthcare and life science, and more in these purposes. So basic idea is that I have a data, and I know this data has got some values X, and which is going to give me some values Y, and I can connect the X with Y, so I sort of plot, like the different plot, I can find a smooth fit to the data and give it some amount of error around it, some space, fuzzy space around it, and anything is within that space, you'll say that it is part of the data, and you can sort of find out the Y from it. So basically, you sort of do some fitting, and from the fitting, you try to predict it. So this is, but then there are problems also in thing, and basically what we have done is that we have tried to separate out things, is that we have tried to separate out two types of data. One data being part of the line, and another data which is not part of the line. It could be linear, or it could be a non-linear thing, in that you need not have a straight line that is separating. You could have a curve that separates out the two material. That is when you have got SVM and other generalized Gaussian data tests. Of course, the problems in such cases is that I can keep fitting. Here it is a good fit, but if I try to fit all the data points, it is possible that I do an overfitting. And by doing overfitting, you may actually lose on the data. So this is important that we do not do an overfitting. And basically, again, the overfitting will depend on the frequency of the data, and the frequency will depend on the Nyquist theorem and on the other properties which is there. The hypotheses that are not too simple, not too complex, avoid overfitting on tracing the data. So given the training the data unlabeled instances, this is unsupervised, that was supervised learning. So we try to find out the data, is that we try to find out how many clusters do exist in the data, and try to see the clustering of the data. And from the clustering, we try to determine the unsupervised learning. that we have from the data, what we see, a pre-processing stem for more supervised learning data. So basically, you have a set of data, and then you try to do it. So this is online learning, is that learn with one example or sample mini batch of example at a time. Reinforced learning. Now, reinforced learning is learning a policy by performing action and getting rewards. So whenever you do a right action, you get a reward, and you do a wrong action, you get a punishment or a thing. So basically, the same thing that you use for training a dog or any animal, you could also train a robot or anything. You can think of trying to play a tic-tac-toe based on this action of reward and punishment. So this is one thing. And transfer learning is that you do training for some particular thing like C++, you do this thing. And then you transfer the learning into Java, say for instance. Or I learned to learn balancing on a cycle and then drive a bike. Of course, this is transfer learning. So basically, you apply to some domain your machine learning thing, and then change the domain and apply it to the new domain, and you see how it works on this domain. In fact, we did try to work on this. I used to work on some spherical symmetries related to comets, but when I got my student here, he said that he wanted to detect faces. Now, what is a phase? Phase detection is basically deviation from spherical symmetry. So he detects a person from his nose, eyes, mouth, and these are deviations from spherical symmetry. It's the same code that you apply on the comets, you can apply on the face and get these deviations as a feature of the face, and then you can recognize people from these features. So here I've completed 1 hour. Just give me some more time. So this is basically data representation. I'll just skip through the data representation. I'll go up to the examples of some classifiers. Again, we have different sets. We try to find out the mean of the different sets to represent the whole set, and try to define a distance between the two means, and take the mid distance as the separator between these two distances. And we say that this is classified as two different objects according to this. So you have this sort of formulation, and not going into the mathematics of the machine learning, since I have practically run out of time. I'll just come to some of the work that we did. Here we have at IIIT Allahabad, we built a human gait locomotion or a prosthetic leg, where the leg had to recognize if the person is going to walk fast or walk slow. Basically, we used the signal taking from the heel strike and tried to get the human gait. Now, to understand the human gait, we actually put people with such suits to understand how a knee joint works. And later, after understanding this, knowledge was put into the leg. And here you have the person, here you see here the person practicing differently. He falls also. And we see that the leg, the robotic leg, pretty well working with the thing, is that basically using the basics of machine learning and artificial intelligence, basically taking the heel strike oscillation as a period of oscillation, and using that period, you try to compute the oscillation of the knee joint, and accordingly, you generate the oscillator. So here, that was in a domain where it was in a controlled environment. Here, the person is walking in a different world that is a territory on a flat ground, on staircase, or on an uneven ground, which is there. In fact, you see me, which is pretty thin and young at that time. The next thing that we worked on is autonomous vehicles. So we use something called the subsumption architecture, using simple, like the fly's intelligence. So basically, I want to deal with the more of the intelligence part. If somebody, I have the camera and I see that the camera center is here and the road center is here, I'll try to move right. I'll try to move right so that I keep myself centered to the road. So that is my basic algorithm. I see the center of my camera and try to focus this, bring the center of the camera to the center of the road. So how do I find the center of the road? I take the two edges of the road, divide it by 2, I get the, or average them, I get the center of the road. And knowing the center of the road, I can find out where this center would come and join with this. Now, supposing I get my second stage, I have got a passenger or a passerby walking in the right part of the road. So what it will do is that it will take this edge of the road and replace it by the obstructor. That is, the obstruction is now the left edge of the road. Sorry, the right edge of the road. The left edge remains the same. Now you sort of you take these two edges and try to get the new edge from it and try to travel from it. So here you have one experiment. I don't know if this will work. Basically, we have done the car and we tried to see the person moving forward and backwards with the car. So we have some training, classify the training and testing. We have done this. So just to give you some example, these are some of the images where you can identify. We have tried to identify different objects and we have tried to see what they are by different things. So we have tried to separate out different aspects to it. So here you have got the pillow, the bed cover, the chair, the table, everything is separated out. Here again, an outdoor environment where different objects or different things are changed. And you see here a moving shot, and these are color coded. And using this color coding, you can actually determine the different objects which the camera sees. So here you have got the image, and the camera accordingly stops, or the car stops for the people. Here you've got the camera taking you different location, and accordingly it overtakes also, then it can find out. Okay, so this is the different models which is created. Here is a model. Unfortunately, this doesn't play. It shows this car moving anyway, and of course I've got this different clearance, and these are the different light which comes in. So I can know the tooths from this data. I can do training to find out which tooth is bad from this. In fact, what we basically machine learning does is that it has supervised learning, unsupervised learning, descriptors, continuum, that is regression. We do a dimensional reduction in machine learning. We do something like we find the principal component analysis, basically try to reduce the cluster into its principal components so that we can describe the eigenvectors. We can describe it as a linear system. We can do ICA, LLL, isomaps, and so on and so forth. We have different type of classifiers to choose from: SVM, neural network, naive bias, Bayesian network, logistic regression, randomized forest, boost decision tree, K nearest neighbor, RBMs, etc., etc. So which one is the best? Now I cannot say which one is the best. It depends on the problem. The decision to use machine learning is more important than the choice of a particular learning method. If you have if you have somebody to take off a specific learning mechanism, be wary. So you see, someone says that he's going to use only this sort of a machine learning will work, others will not work. Certainly be careful that he's making some mistake. Okay, so general principle is the coverage. Ensure that the relevant information is captured. You need to capture the whole information, so you need large amount of data. Conscience. Eliminate redundancy without omitting important information. Minimize the number of features without sacrificing the coverage. The ideal features are independently useful for prediction, and one should be there should be a directness. Ideal features are independently useful for prediction, and this is for image intensity. Now, this is a video I wanted to show. Since this is one of the last videos that I wanted to show you. Where is it? So this is one of the robots which was developed at IIITA. So it takes you around. I'm just going fast. It takes you around. And it has some markers, and it takes you around the lab and shows you different properties of the lab. So it is wearing a shirt. So it's just navigation through the thing. So it describes. Now it will also, I'll show you some important aspects. This is the camera. Okay, so now you see that when I move this thing, I've got one of my friends or one of my students coming and blocking its path, and it is very. So it keeps telling, "Excuse me." So it stops. The moment there is a blocking, it stops. So there is some amount of intelligence which has been put into this robot which is there, and it takes you to different objects. Again, he comes and he disturbs it. So he's very cordial. He doesn't shout at the person. He sort of is smart to say, "Excuse me." So it shows you different aspects of the lab, the robotics lab. So basically, this is a simple design which was done by two of our students. So it goes to different area. Of course, it is one of the crude starting thing. Okay, so this was about this robot. Now coming back to the final slide is now this new COVID is visible through X-rays or CT scans. Now, is it possible just with an X-ray can I find out if the patient is COVID or not? Because CT scans are costlier and common man cannot use it. Of course, machine learning has come to the help, and here it's sort of by training multiple X-rays. With a simple X-ray, you can find out the congestion in the lungs. Here you see these red spots. Of course, it is wrongly detected here, but these are certainly in the lungs area which has been affected by the COVID thing. So what you have here now is to err is human or instrumental, to properly analyze and represent it as knowledge is scientific. Universe inclusive of our world reveals itself through different signals which we need to direct and interpret. Knowing the methodology through which the data has been measured, sampled, transmitted, and stored will help us in the conversion of signal to data to information, knowledge to understanding to wisdom. So our topic was from signal to data to information to knowledge. Of course, there is a lot of things under the iceberg. We also discussed from knowledge to understanding to wisdom. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope I could not cover a lot of material. I could not go into the mathematics of machine learning, and I hope I have given you a flair of machine learning where, of course, it's a full course, a semester course or a multi-semester course. So I hope you have liked my presentation. Now, if there are some questions, I could certainly like to accept.
Sir, there are some questions on the chat panel at the right-hand side.
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, can you tell me what, on some questions on?
On the right-hand side chat panel, sir. At the above,
How do I see that?
Yeah, here.
Yeah, so if one gives you the whole data of Tycho Brahe, is it possible to derive the Kepler's laws from that data using ML? I don't know, this could be a very good idea to do it, but then one should understand the basic knowledge. See, you have to tell the machine that, see, in the beginning, what we had is the Earth-centric model. Kepler had the pre-knowledge or the pre-training that there was a Copernican theory. He had this Copernican theory in his mind, and Galileo had already said that there is something like the Copernican theory. So he took the sun in the center of the universe and took the planets as circling the sun using the Copernican theory, and that's using that as a precursor or a pre-training. I think machine learning could derive the elliptical orbits of the thing. It's just the visualization. You need to transform the actual observation to the solar-centric model, from the Earth-centric model to the sun-centric model. And when you convert it to the sun-centric model, you can do this. In fact, if you take the Hipparchus catalog, and Hipparchus catalog is nothing else but it takes the positions of the stars and the location. And so if you can plot the location of these stars very well and then do a transformation, basically come out of the Earth-centric coordinate and take your 0 point somewhere up, you will actually see the stars, you will see the spiral arms of our galaxy. From the Earth, you don't see the spiral arms of the galaxy. But when you model it, through a computer, you can actually transform it and go and visualize and see the spiral arms of the galaxy. So it's the same question of Tycho Brahe. Can it be done? I think certainly it could be done, but with the pre-knowledge of what things are, how motion is. So, okay, this is by Shiny Chatterjee. I understand probably so. Yeah.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, Shiny, tell your question, please.
Sorry, I am Shiny here. Yeah. So my question was about you have shown in some plot where you have plotted some density of the planets or the solar.
Yeah, I plotted the density of
materials, Earth, Jupiter, Saturn.
Yeah.
So that plot, if you can go back.
Yeah, I'm going back to that plot. Yeah.
Yeah, this one. So
Yeah.
I mean, you have tagged moon as an outlier, right?
Yeah, I see the moon,
So
which is
it is in density versus
density of the moon is very low. Here you
one
see
and
this is the density of the moon. Density of the Earth is here. If Earth and Moon
Yes,
will
so-
form together, they should have the same density. If they were formed at the
Okay, no,
same
my
time,
question was something else.
yeah, tell me.
Yeah. So my question was, how did you draw that curve? I mean, that curve, whatever. I mean, that was connecting all the planets and asteroids
No,
also.
this is just joining the
And what
straight.
I
This is not a curve. This is basically joining it with straight lines. I'm not seeing any relation
straight
in it.
line.
I've just measured the density. I know I can I know the distance to the planet. I know the size of the planet. Knowing some Newton's theory, I can find out the mass of every planet, knowing the period of rotation and knowing its distance from the sun. And knowing the mass, I can certainly find its density.
So you have
that's
just
how.
connected 2 points continuously.
Yes, yes, the line is
Trim
just
the
connecting
straight line.
these dots. Connecting these dots. Of course, there is some physics behind it. Basically, you have more metallic. Basically, when the solar system became cool, the metals cooled faster. So the gases actually ran away to further area, and you had heavier elements which remained closer to the sun because of the T20 phase. The gas was sort of driven out. So these gases were captured by Jupiter, Saturn, and others. So what we have, these are rocky planets. So that's why they're heavier. Anyway, that goes into different physics or astrophysics.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay.
Yeah. So now I have a question from Sarthak Sengupta. I think Sarthak Sengupta is from IIITA. Okay, welcome Sarthak. He's from the management department at IIITA. So thanks a lot for your knowledgeable session. Now I don't know. Thank you very much, Sarthak. Okay, there is a question from CASILab. Can you, Daipan, read the question?
So could you please elaborate how students can pursue their masters in IT at your institute after passing out bachelor's degree?
Okay. After passing out bachelor's degree, see, my institute takes directly from joint entrance examination, that is JEE. So after class 12 is the BTech entrance into BTech program. But of course, we also have a master's program. The master's program has got we take MTech, so we take BTech students in ITEC for their master's program, that is an MTech degree. So they should have a GATE qualification to join the course. Of course, if someone is with a bachelor's degree, we have plans of actually have an integrated MTech course where you add one additional year. That is, according to the new education policy, since your BSc is 3 years, you need an additional year to become a bachelor's student. So you actually have, instead of a 2 years master's program, you have a 3 years master's program. This is in the pipeline. It is not yet started. What you have is that if you have a BTech, you could join for an MTech. If you're an MSc, you could join for an MTech, where you need to qualify GATE. Now, MSc students can join MTech in data science, but without scholarship, because scholarship comes from GATE. If he doesn't have a GATE score, if he has a GATE score, of course, he gets a scholarship. If he doesn't have a GATE score, he can still join the data science. It is self-financing mode. So, which is run by the Applied Science Division of IIITA. So, you could mail me. I could forward your mail to the Applied Science head, and he could further inform you about the MTech in data science.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
There's a question by Arindam Roy. Arindam, can you pose your question? Is there internship program for students of BSc and MSc students? Certainly, there could be an internship program. You could have an unofficial internship program, or you could have an official internship. Only the official internship program, you need to actually inform and you need to pay the institute. There is some charges that the institute charges. Say for online internship, the charge is less. If you have to come and stay in the hostel, there is a charge for the fooding and the hostels. But nowadays there's only online internship available due to COVID. So you may contact any teacher and you may say that you're interested in working something. So he may get in touch with some of his students and sort of you can work in the domain. You can work on your own. Like I've worked with Pavan, we have done wonderful work. Whenever I asked him to code in C, he would code in Fortran. But it was fine. It was fine with me because finally the results were there. So that was there. So that is possible.
Okay, sir.
That is possible.
Okay.
Can people from corporate sector do PhD in your center? Certainly, we have a program called PhD for working professionals and MTech for working professionals. This is that the corporate sector has to become a center of IIITA, because see, as per Government of India rules, for PhD you have to be residential. Now, if the corporate becomes a center of IIITA, you become working in the corporate sector, you become a residential of IIITA. Legally, you become a residential of IIITA. So now, remotely, you can always have a guide, you can always learn remotely. Like this whole semester, this whole year, we have been teaching remotely to the students. We have taught all the courses remotely. So similarly, these students, in fact, these remote classes started with these corporate students. And in the process, when COVID came, we were practically ready to hold these remote classes very efficiently. So they can be. So for some exams or some final thing, they will have to come to the campus. Otherwise, mostly they can do. Or they may invite the supervisor to their campus, and the interaction can take place. And in the process, you have an industry and institute or university handshaking, which the Government of India would certainly love to have. So this is an effort towards that. So there is a PhD for corporate world, but then this is a little more costlier, since we assume that the corporate can pay a little more. So it is not subsidized as other courses are. Any more questions? So I think I'll switch on my straight camera rather than the other camera. So any more questions? So that, yeah, there are some more questions here. What is quantum ML? What is quantum ML? Machine learning in quantum world. See, machine learning will come when you have large data. Now, I don't know the quantum ML. One thing is that we're still in the preliminary research domain. We are trying to see how we can store data in a more compressed manner. And going into qubits gives us, or the theory tells us that we can store information in a much smaller area. And of course, when you have large data stored in a smaller region, you certainly could have an interaction between this data and try to classify this data into different properties. So I guess machine learning would depend something like that. But of course, it will have to be something related with some quantum mechanical theories of expectation values or something of that kind. In fact, establishment, finally we store the data, and then when finally we would like to extract the data, of course it is through expectation values that we will extract the data, rather than in I think if students are of physics would understand what is expectation value. Right? So why moon is called an outlier? Can you explain it again kindly? Okay. See, what you see here is that we would expect if the Earth has formed, the moon would have been formed simultaneously with that of the Earth. Okay. Now we see that the density, if it was formed simultaneously with the density of the Earth, means with Earth, it would have the similar density because the material in that region had a specific density through which the Earth has got its density. Now, we see that the moon having lesser density. That means the moon could have been somewhere further away. It could be somewhere near Jupiter, or let me share the screen again. Okay, so the moon could have been somewhere close to between the Mars and asteroidal belt, and then something would have pushed it close to that of the Earth, and the Earth would have captured it. This is one theory. The other theory, and the other theory which works fine, or which is better, which is understood, is that the moon wasn't there in the beginning. Earth was there, and there was the T-Tauri phase. The lighter materials moved away, and you had the Earth which coagulated, and there was a centrifuge which took place, and the heavier elements of the Earth moved to the core of the Earth, while the lighter material remained to the surface of the Earth. Now there could have been some asteroid or some meteorite or something which traversed very close to the Earth, or it chipped a portion of the Earth out from the Earth's surface. Now the surface being of a lighter material, it moved into space, and this again later on coagulated in together and formed the moon. In fact, you don't see a lot of metallic parts. The heavy elements do not exist on the moon. You see the surface elements which are there. So in fact, another thing, the moon doesn't have a magnetic field. Moon is a solid material. It doesn't have a molten core where the core is there. There's a plasma rotating, creating the magnetic field. So the moon has solidified from the surface area. In fact, that also tells us why there is a large area of the Earth which is little more dented, which forms the Pacific Ocean region, right? You had one region which was the Eurasia, which was there. Of course, the Africa and other continents separated it out later on. Water then came into this planet through external agents like comets and other things. Of course, because there was no atmosphere in the beginning, because the T-Tauri phase would have taken the atmosphere out. The moon could not capture atmosphere because the moon doesn't have sufficient amount of mass. So that is why moon being an outlier tells us that the moon was not formed with the Earth. It was formed after the Earth had already solidified or had sort of centrifuged the heavier elements going to the core of the Earth and the lighter materials coming more to the surface of the Earth. That's when the moon was chipped off from the surface of the Earth. But this is not a machine learning algorithm. This is basically physics which you're asking me. Machine learning just tells me that there is an outlier, so there's some mistake or there's some problem there. Then a physicist has to go and try to solve the problem.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your wonderful talk.
Thank you. I've taken half an hour more for you.
No,
It was
sir.
a pleasure speaking to all of you. Thank you very
Give
much.
a big hand to the speaker.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving this nice.
Okay, then so I can log out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let
Thank
us
you very
conclude
much.
this talk, wonderful talk. And I thank you again for this.
Okay, thank you very much.